Okay, so in this next couple of lessons, we're going to be talking about chord extensions. So in the first class, we talked about seventh chords. Now, if you remember, let's do a quick little review of what a seventh chord was. So let me just zoom in here. Let's make a C major chord. Okay, so root, third, fifth. Okay, C major chord. Sounds happy, sounds cool. Now the seventh was taking it one step further. So we did the root, the third, the fifth, and then the seventh, right? This would be the sixth, this would be the seventh. So now remember, we looked at two different kinds of seventh chords. The major seventh chord, which would be where this note, the seventh, is just normal as it appears in the key. It has this kind of pretty sound to it. Let's hear that a little bit longer. Okay. And then we had a dominant seventh chord where we took this down a half step, and that gives us the seventh chord that's used in a lot. I mean, I don't want to say it's more common, but it's equally as common to do this kind of a seventh chord where we take the seventh down a half step. And this is called a dominant seventh chord. Has a little bit more of a dissonant sound. Now, those same seventh chords exist in a minor key. So if we were on a C minor scale, that would be taking the third down a half step. So to convert a minor chord. So to convert a major chord to a minor chord, all you need to do is take the third of the chord and go down. If you want to convert this scale from major to minor, you need the third, the sixth, and the seventh, right? But if it's just the chord, the triad, then you take the third and go down, because we don't have the sixth or the seventh in the key if it's just the triad, right? Because the triad is just the root, the third, and the fifth. So now in a minor key, this would be my seventh chord. It would be a minor triad with this flat seven, but this seventh tone is not flat anymore, because in a minor key, this is where it is. It is, because remember, the seventh is down in a minor key. So this is the naturally occurring seventh chord in a minor key based on the root. So this is a C in the key of C minor. We get a C minor 7. And typically how we would write that would be like this. We would do a C and then lowercase m 7. That's how we write these out. So that's what this is, a C minor chord with a seventh. We also see written C7. That's what we were on before, a C major chord with a flat 7. This is kind of shorthand. The flat is implied, which means the seventh is one half step lower than it should be. We don't write this flat, we just write C7, and it's implied that that's what we're doing. The first way that we looked at it was a C major chord with a major seventh, where the seventh was a B in our case, the one that occurs naturally in the scale, and that we write as C maj 7. That means a C major with a major seventh. It's kind of weird the way we've developed this shorthand, but that's just the way it works. Sometimes in like older music, it's not used as much anymore, but sometimes you'll see this symbol, a triangle. That means C major 7. This triangle just kind of developed for a while as a shorthand way of saying major seventh, to use this triangle, but you don't see it very much anymore. Okay, so in a minor key, we have C minor 7 is what we're looking at here. So a C minor chord with a seventh, and this is the seventh that occurs naturally in the key. It happens to be a minor seventh. Let's hear what a C minor chord with a seventh sounds like. This is a C minor 7. It's got kind of a pretty sound to it. It's used I don't know. It's used all over the place for all kinds of different stuff. And you will encounter these in dance music songs. It's not uncommon to throw the seventh in to a chord. Now, the more of these extensions, the extensions are like the numbers after, the more of them you throw in, and you can throw in more and more and more. You can go up higher. You can go to 7th, 9th, 13th, and we'll look at those in the next lesson. But the more of those you add, the more kind of, and this is like a really, really general term, but the more kind of jazz it sounds. So if you want to sound really jazzy, you want to go up to like the 13th. Have a 13th in there, that gets to sound like kind of jazz. 7th is pretty common. We kind of expect that in a lot of stuff, and we'll look at some tunes with a 7th in them in the next analysis that we do. So this is a C minor 7th chord. Okay, so now that we've looked at the C minor 7th, let's just let's build another minor 7th chord just to kind of reinforce this. So let's get rid of that. Let's say we're in the key of, I don't know, what's something we haven't worked in much yet? How about E minor? Okay, so I'm going to make an E. Let's put that right there, because first I'm just going to draw out the E minor scale. So remember our pattern. You're so sick of hearing me say this pattern at this point, but I'm going to keep saying it because you need to remember it. It's super crucially important. So it's whole step, half step, whole step, half step, oops, whole step, whole step. So there is our E minor scale, okay? All the notes of the E minor, the key of E minor. So now to build a chord on E minor, since it is the key of E minor, I'm going to need the root, there's the second, there's the third, there's the fourth, and there's the fifth. I need the root, third, and fifth. Now if I want to go one step higher and add the 7th, this would be the 6th, there's the 7th. So that is the E minor 7th chord. Now, what if I want to go through my diatonic chord progressions, right? We know those. So I could build a chord based on D, the next note up, the second scale degree of the chord, and F sharp. So let's put this over here. That's our one chord. So if I built a chord on F sharp, it's going to be F sharp, A, C, and then the 7th would be, there's the 6th, there's the 7th. So it all works the same. Let's put that over there. Extend it out a little bit. And now what kind of a chord do we have here? We have F sharp, A, C, and if you remember the pattern of diatonic chord progressions, this is our diminished chord. So this is the weird one that we don't really like. So here we have a diminished 7th chord, which is even stranger than what we've looked at. This is going to sound really kind of, it's going to have a fair amount of dissonance to it. Let's let that ring out a little bit more so we can really hear it. So it's less useful to us in any kind of dance music, but it still has its place. Let's do one more. Let's do the 3rd. So if I build a chord based on the 3rd scale degree in E minor, it's going to be G, there's the 2nd, there's the 3rd, there's the 4th, there's the 5th. G, B, D. That makes a major chord because remember from our pattern, it goes minor, diminished, major, etc. So this is going to be a G major chord. Now if I want to add the 7th, here's the 6th, and then I have to circle around again. So E is E, F sharp is the next note. So I have to go up to F sharp. That's going to be the 7th. And now I have a major chord. Oops, I don't want that E in there, right? Now I have a major chord with a 7th on it. So this ends up being a major 7th, the natural 7th that occurs, the kind of really pretty one. Oops. We always use the word pretty to describe this chord. So that's the one that occurs naturally in the minor scale on the 3rd scale degree. Okay, so seventh chords still apply in the same way as they did when we talked about seventh chords a while ago. We just go up one more step and we get the seventh chord, and you'll end up with minor seventh chords, or sometimes you'll end up with major seventh chords, which is the same actually as how it worked when we looked at seventh chords initially. There are a couple minor seventh chords, a couple major seventh chords, and there's that one dominant seventh chord. That's the one with the flatted seventh that occurs naturally in the key. More on that soon. Next, we're going to talk about some more extensions if you want to add more notes to the chord in the next lesson. Hey guys, just another little add-on to that last lesson. After reviewing it, I thought I should explain this one little thing a little bit better. So what I want to explain is that just like we had the diatonic chord progression that in a major key, or well, in a major or a minor key, alternates between major chords and minor chords for what naturally occurs in the key, the seventh chords do the same thing, whether or not we get that major seventh or that minor seventh. Those are just kind of dependent on the key, which one we get, right? So let me demonstrate that really quick. Here I have the diatonic chord progression in E minor. So all the chords in E minor. And the pattern is minor, diminished, major, minor, minor, major, major, and then minor I put in parentheses here because it's an E again. So these two chords are the same. They're both an E minor chord. I just repeated it again at the end. So this is just our normal chord progression built out of thirds in the key of E minor. And we get the pattern, totally what we would expect. Let's hear that really quick just to get it in our heads. Oops. Okay, now let's look at the seventh. Okay, now we're looking at all of the chords, diatonic chord progression just as normal, but I've added the seventh for each chord. And so what we get is the first chord ends up being a minor seventh chord. So that was the normal, what we would expect. So this is a C minor 7. And I'm going to tell you in a minute, by the end of this section of it, I'm going to show you why I care about how we write these, because I want you to be able to spot them if you're doing a project when someone hands you a sheet of chords, which is more common than you would think, especially for remixes. Okay, so our second one is a diminished seventh. So that's our diminished chord with a seventh. Our third one is a major seventh. That's the pretty one that happens here on our third chord. The fourth one is a minor seventh again, like the first one. Our fifth chord is a minor seventh again, like the first one. Our sixth is a major seventh, again, the pretty one. Our seventh is the weird one that is going to be that dominant seventh. So it's a major chord with a minor seventh. So it's got that flatted seventh, but it's not flatted technically because in key it is already flatted in this key. If we build a chord on the seventh scale degree, it gives us this. It gives us essentially a D7 chord, which remember is the shorthand of saying it's not that major pretty sound. It's got that slight dissonance to it. And then we start over again here, and we have a minor seventh on E again. So let's hear this one, and then we'll hear them back to back. Okay, now let's hear these back to back. So I'm gonna drag all these over. So listen for the way these chords sound, just the triads, as different from the triads with the seventh in them. So they'll still sound all in key. Nothing will strike you as like, wow, that sounds totally out of key. But the chords are a little bit thicker, right? Because they've got 4 notes as opposed to 3. So here are the triads and then the sevenths. And the sevenths. So sometimes we use the word color and we say that these chords have a little bit more color to them because of the seventh note. It gives them a little more, it gives them this extra kind of like prettiness in the major seventh chords. It gives them this a little bit darker tinge on the minor seventh chords. The sevenths in these cases just kind of emphasize what's already there. So the major chords are even more major. They have this like super like prettiness to them, I guess. I gotta stop saying pretty. The minor chords are a little bit darker yet. So the pattern of major and minor sevenths alternates in the same way that the chord alternates. You don't need to remember the pattern. I wouldn't say the way I'm like forcing the alternation of major and minor chords in the diatonic chord progressions. I'm forcing you to remember that by saying it over and over. I wouldn't worry about memorizing the seventh chords because they just sort of happen and you know how to figure them out. So don't clutter your brain with memorizing yet another pattern. But just know how to find them when you need them. That's all.